Hello, and welcome back to the UX Business Architect, where we merge UX design, business strategy, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Mercedes Johnson, a design consultant, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about predictive insights. We're going to cover what they are, why they're important to you as a designer or an entrepreneur, and some ethical considerations to keep in mind. So sit back, grab a nice beverage, and let's get right to it. All right, let's jump in. Today, we're going to be talking about leveraging AI for predictive insights. But first, we want to make sure we have a really good understanding of what predictive insights are, why they're important in UX, and all the things you need to know about how to extract them. So if you're jumping in for your very first time, this is the lay of the land of where we've been and where we are going. So there are videos for each of these milestones. We got started with a new team. If you haven't watched that, go back there. We went over how to create personas with AI. We went through workshop prep and facilitation, and now we're at the point where we're leveraging AI for predictive insights. So you did your workshop, you got all that information, and now you're figuring out what should I do with it, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and then we're going to wrap it all up with rapid design and presentation with AI to close out the series. Okay, so we're going to cover two different things: leveraging AI and the AI tools that you can use, or the ones that are out there that you just need to be aware of and what they can do, not necessarily be like a guru at how to use them, but just be aware that you might be working with the outputs of those tools. Okay, so predictive insights. What are predictive insights? Predictive insights are basically guesses that are powered by data, right? So this is where you're looking through like pattern recognition, right? So you did this 10 times, you might do it again, right? So we're leveraging data in order to make an educated guess on what the user is going to do next, right? And usually this is powered by AI or machine learning, but our ultimate goal here is try to figure out what are they going to do next, and then how can we design that next step proactively instead of reactively. But we'll go into that a little bit further in a minute. Okay, so why is this important to UX designers? Because it is our job to design great experiences, right? And you want to design proactively, not reactively, right? And so what that means is I want to anticipate the pain point that my user is going to have and then try and figure out how can I solve it before it even happens, or completely keep it from happening at all with my designs, right? So whenever you're able to do that, you are improving the personalization of that experience, right? You want the user to feel like this experience was designed for them, right? And if someone else were to interact with this technology, their experience would be different than my experience, right? And so this is why you want to figure out how to leverage this data so that you can consistently create these experiences, because those are going to be the ones that stand out from like your generic kind of just everyone gets the same experience kind of designs, right? And there are products out there that are already doing this, and maybe you aren't even aware of it, but I wanted to bring them forward. Spotify suggested playlists, right? That is an example of a personalized experience. They even came out with their AI DJ, which is super awesome, that you can basically talk to and tell them what you want to listen to, right? Whether if you're in a certain mood or you want to listen to a certain song, right? They have personalized that DJ to you, and the DJ will play songs based off of your listening behavior. So if it noticed that you kind of had a song on repeat recently, it might add that into the playlist, or you're listening to a certain artist, or you seem like you're in a certain mood, right? It'll curate songs based off of what you're doing, right? And that is hyper personalization at its finest. Then we have Netflix, because you watched, right? Or Hulu, or whatever streaming network you use. This is also an example of a highly personalized experience where the technology that they have embedded into their system is trying to predict what kind of entertainment you would enjoy based off of the entertainment that you consume. right? So these big companies are already doing this. It's not brand new, right? But it is intentional. For example, Amazon reorder reminders, right? They notice that, hey, you buy dog food on average about every month or 2 months or so. It might be time to buy dog food. So it might pop that up to the top of your feed, or give you a reminder. Google Maps, ETA adjustments. I mean, this technology and this personalization can be embedded into every experience. It has to be intentional, and it is everywhere, and you might not be aware of it, but that's what makes these companies stand out from the rest, is because they are intentionally trying to solve your problems before they happen. And the only way that you can do this is if you have data, and not just like a mess of data. You know, like you have those companies or clients where they're like, yeah, we have all this data. And you're like, how are you using it? And they're like, we're not. And the answer behind why they're not using it is probably because it's not organized, it's not clean, it's not unbiased in the way that they were capturing the data, right? You want to make sure that you have the appropriate sample size, right? So you don't want to collect data. Let's say you are a Fortune 500 company and you do a survey of 25 people and then want to say that the result out of the 25 people represent the entire customer base of a Fortune 500 company. That's unrealistic, right? And that sample size is not accurate in order for you to draw insights from, right? So if you weren't intentional about how you were capturing the data in the first place, and how you're storing the data, how you're leveraging the data, how you're cleaning the data might be useless. But that doesn't mean that it can't be cleaned, but that does mean that there is an additional step that has to happen at the beginning before you can begin leveraging that data. So just because a company has data doesn't mean it's solid data, and it's up to you to figure out, what does that data look like? How is it stored? Is it segregated or is it centralized, right? Do they have it in all these different places? That's your job as a consultant or as an in-house designer, to come in and help them understand. If you're trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to leverage this to build a highly personalized experience for our customers? Or this is relevant for, how are we going to leverage this so that we can add AI capabilities on top of it, right? You can't do any of that if your data is not clean. Okay, so we have predictive UX versus reactive UX, and we definitely want to be on the side of predictive, right? Reactive is responding after an action has taken place. This is where all of your users are going to have the exact same experience whenever they interact with your app or your application or your web app. It's rule based, so it's going to be if this, then that. If a user clicks this button, then show this modal, right? Those are signs that you are designing in a more reactive kind of environment versus the predictive side. So this is where it's highly personalized, right? My playlist on Spotify is, or that's curated for me, is not going to look like your playlist on Spotify, even though we're using the same application, right? That's an indicator of a personalized experience versus a non-personalized experience. It is also data driven. The only way that you can get that playlist is if you knew my listening history, right? Or you knew how often I listen to songs and what artists I listen to, and you were tracking that, right? They had to be intentional about collecting that data and making sure that it's stored and organized before they can leverage it, right? And that's what allowed them to be on the predictive side versus the reactive side. Predictive makes you feel like the product knows you. It creates stickier and more engaging experiences, right? So figure out what side your current product is on, or your client's product is on, and figure out, what does the data look like to see how we can get them to this side. All right, I cannot cover the topic of personalization or predictive insights without talking about the ethics of prediction. There is a time and place for prediction to enter into your experiences. One, you do not want to enter it in whenever predictions could cause harm or anxiety, right? So think about like if it is that you're in the healthcare space, right? That's a pretty touchy place to design hyper personalized experiences, or that's probably an area where you don't really want to bring gamification in. And I can give you a real world example of where one of our clients was looking to design a gamified experience in the healthcare realm, um, and wanted to gamify like diabetes tracking. And this is kind of where I had to step in as a designer and as a consultant and advise my client that this could be a potentially harmful place to bring in gamification, right? Because you don't know what these people are going through, and this is a life and death kind of situation that we're dealing with, like literally life and death. And we don't want our technology and our experiences to make them feel bad or worse about the situation that they have no control of being under in that circumstance, right? Or that they're trying to better themselves in. And by gamifying it, it is a very, very tight line that you're walking when it comes to you potentially having a negative emotional impact on your users whenever they're trying to deal with this situation. So think about it before you do it. Make sure that it's intentional as always, but also make sure you're looking out for your end user at all times and you being the barrier between allowing these kind of negative, potentially negative experiences out into the world. That is your responsibility as a designer. And as a client, they might not know these things, but it is your job to understand how harmful it can be. Um, Another one, do not do predictive insights if your data is bad, right? We went over this. So if your data is not good, it wasn't collected fairly, it doesn't represent your customer base accurately, don't don't leverage it, don't use it in like by the masses. Make sure you're collecting clean data, it's organized, it's unbiased, it's representative of your customer base accurately before you start leveraging it. And then last one is when trust is more valuable than automation, right? There are going to be moments where you don't want automation to come into your experiences. Things that are kind of indicators of where you want to be careful of this are going to be like in the financial realm, in the medical realm, in the emotional support realm, if you're dealing with people who have like are facing sort of like mental health issues or financial struggle, or again, the medical field have some sort of health issue. You do not really want to overdo it in those places. Not to say that there aren't moments and times where it is appropriate, but there also are going to be moments and times where it's not. So just be careful of where you're designing and making sure that you're looking at these from an ethical lens. But the beautiful part of injecting predictive experiences into your work is that there is a general framework that you can leverage, and it's pretty standard when it comes to just like the steps that you want to take. If you're familiar with UX research and you've done UX research, then this should be fairly familiar to you. And again, this is not the end all be all framework, but it is the general framework that you can go through if you're trying to figure out where to get started. So you're going to start off with observing your behavior, right? This is going to be where you're collecting your data ethically and fairly and unbiasedly. And you're going to see, what are people doing? What are they listening to? What are they watching? What are they clicking? All of that stuff. So you're going to have a period of time where you're watching an appropriate sample size to see, what do they do? And then from there, you're going to analyze your patterns. This is a great place for AI to come in and help you do so, right? So figure out what are the trends, what is standing out, what are the most commonly clicked buttons, what are the most listened to songs or tracks or artists or things like that, right? Recognize what those patterns are. Then hypothesize next steps. Figure out, okay, well, for most people, when they click this, they did this next, right? And figure out, are there trends or are there hypotheses that you make as a designer, as a researcher, or as a data scientist to figure out what could they do next, or what might they want to do next, or where are they taking this next. This might be additional research that you have to do. This could be another protocol that you put together for research to figure out what that looks like, but essentially figure out what's the next step. And then from there, figure out proactive touch points, right? So figure out where are you going to inject this new hyper personalized experience, right? Okay, so the DJ one, right? Um, Whenever you're listening to a soundtrack or whatever, he'll chime in every time that you kind of hit the skip button a couple times. So it's like, okay, you've hit the skip button about 3 times, and then he comes in and then he changes up the songs that you're listening to, because clearly he's not getting it right if you're hitting the skip button, right? So figure out what that touch point is and design it into the experience, and then test it. See if that works, if it's working how you thought it was going to work, or if you still need to go back and tweak it a little bit, right? But you're going to continue this process, and eventually you're going to get to a point where your experience kind of becomes hyper personalized, right? But if you go through this framework, it's going to get you there. Again, it's not the end all be all, but it is a really good starting place if you're trying to figure out just how do I get started in general hyper personalizing my experience or trying to extract these predictive insights. Okay, so there are tools out there that do this for you. But usually it's like the role of a data scientist that's using these tools, not a UX designer. However, it is not crazy or unexpected for these companies and jobs to require that you do have some sort of familiarity with these tools. So we're going to go into them, but I'm not here to encourage you to go and like be an expert or a master at these tools by any means. However, you do want to understand like what the output is and maybe how to just lightly navigate them in case you are asked to jump into them. So the first one is Tableau with the Einstein discovery. So this is kind of like a dashboard where it surfaces up all of these insights of how these user behaviors are showing up wherever it's being tracked. Again, it has to be intentionally tracked, but it is fairly user friendly. If your company is using it, then awesome, because it doesn't require like a huge data science background, and it is like no coding involved, where there are a lot of them that do require coding. So this is one to just kind of be aware of. Tableau in general is really highly used in the commercial world, in the corporate world. So just know what it is and what it does and the output and how to use it. Power BI, again, is another one that is very highly used. This one also does generate some really cool dashboards that you can get these insights from. So let's say you don't have like a dedicated researcher to go and do all of this research. If you have Power BI injected in your client's company, or just have to work with it, it is a really great tool for tracking all of these insights for you that you can then take and then go and design on top of. So another one to be aware of, just kind of know how it works, what the output is, play around with it, look at the dashboards and the configurations. That way, if your client does have it, you can kind of say, hey, this is what we need out of this tool, and that we can leverage in our designs. And the other one is Looker Studio. This is a Google Cloud product. If you are like an entrepreneur and you have like a Gmail or whatever, an official Gmail account, like the paid one, then you should be able to go and actually play around with this yourself, and you have access to it already. So a great one that you probably didn't even know you can get your hands on if you're in the entrepreneurial world. But again, also very user friendly. The dashboards are pretty simple, no coding is required or anything like that. So just familiarize yourself with these tools and understand what the output of them are, maybe what the initial ask might be of your clients if you're trying to figure out how can you empower your designers or your research team to design something that is curated for their specific audience. If they have any of these tools already embedded in their company, then you're off to a great start, and the output of it isn't like crazy. But I wouldn't say that you need to go and learn how to configure these, or like, I mean, if you want to, you can. It's not going to help, or it's not harmful to know. It would help you. But the good thing is that you can do pretty much a lot of this stuff with your LLM. When it comes to just extracting insights per se to design on top of. And this is what I would recommend for you to use if it is that you're going through your research in the typical design manner and you're not leveraging the output of what your client has, right? So let's say you went and you conducted all of your own research, you got your own findings, you did your, all your due diligence to get the right pool and sample size of your customer base. Once you organize your data, you can put it into your LLM to extract those insights for you. Again, you want to check against it, make sure you read everything that comes out of it. Do not just rely on it 100%. This is to help you become more efficient, not to replace you. I cannot stress that anymore. But once you add, let's say if you get all of your, let's say you did user interviews, for example, put all your user interview notes into an Excel sheet. You can upload your Excel sheet into your LLM and ask to prompt against it. So say, hey, can you pull out the high level trends, the high level pain points? You can, it's at least I use chat GPT, and it's not really good at getting like verbatims. So I would suggest you pull those yourself, but you can ask it to extract all of those trends for you, and then you just go back and verify. But figuring out again where to inject AI into your workflow to make you more efficient, again, not to replace what you're doing or to 100% rely on it as your output, is going to make you a better designer or researcher. So, for the sake of the workshop, I'm not going to walk you through it, but I want you to do it at home. This is how you can practice using predictive extraction at home with your LLM. So, the scenario here is that you are a part of a UX team for a food delivery app that has been experiencing a rising number of abandoned orders and customer complaints. Users are browsing menus, starting orders, but often leaving without completing them. At the same time, customer satisfaction scores are dropping and support tickets are increasing around issues like long delivery times, confusing checkout processes, and missing items, right? So if you're trying to practice this at home and figure out how can I use AI to get predictive insights, what you're going to do is you're going to ask your LLM to create data based off of this prompt, like fake data, right? So you can pick your sample size. Let's say you have a sample of 25, right? So go in and say, hey, Chat GPT, Bard, Gemini, whatever you want to use, and say, hey, give me a table of customer satisfaction scores that are trending down. Give me a table of random delivery times that are, subjectively long. Give me a table of customer complaints, right? So you get these three tables, and then from there, your job is to analyze all that information. So you would take all of that data collectively and then put it back into your LLM and say, hey, look for trends. What's going on here? What are some ways that we can hypothetically improve this application to resolve these issues, right? And then from there, your challenge is to use the insights from the LLM and then design on top of that what a future improvement for that experience might look like. And that's your starting point, right? So you would be able to say, hey, everyone's trending down, and we noticed that people are abandoning cart around like 5 p.m., right? You see a spike in the delivery times when everyone's abandoning cart. Maybe it's taking longer. People are complaining that delivery times are too long during a certain time period or whatever. And then that's where you, as the designer, would come in and say, how can I design on top of this to make this experience better? How can I prevent people from abandoning cart? What can I add into this experience to incentivize them to continue through the checkout process? And then that's where you do your ideation, right? And it'll get you closer to solving those problems before the problems arise. If you look at the data and you analyze it and you figure out what are the next steps, or how can I prevent this from happening based off of what's already happening, and get into the habit of doing that, that's what's going to allow you to be more proactive than reactive. So that's your homework. If you want a breakdown of what you're supposed to do, review the raw data. Again, ask your LLM to generate random raw data for you. And then figure out what are the patterns. Ask it questions, figure out what's going on. Identify some insights. Okay, so here are the different things that you found to be true with your data. And then explore some ideation on top of that. What are some ways that you can solve for this? Get out a pen and paper, sketch out some ideas, right? The more that you get into the habit of practicing this and understanding when and where to do this, how to inject AI into your workflow, when to inject it in, is going to help you be a more efficient designer. So good luck. I hope it was helpful. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you learned something new and can add a skill to your design toolkit. If you like today's content, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you here next time.